and welcome to the Book Bunch. My name is Sam. It is so great to have you guys back for another video. This week is all about sci-fi again. I spent the last few days reading some, and then there's a couple I've thrown in there from a previous couple of videos, but they didn't make it into a sci-fi specific video, so I thought I'd throw them in there because they're super good. But the rest of the books are a little bit touch and go. So we'll get right into it, and I'll start with the DNF that I had, which is the Centauri device. This is meant to be like one of the more classic sci-fis out there, but I just got bored, to be honest. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like super clean either. Like there was a little bit of language, but the story was just okay, and I got like halfway through and then I put it down for like a day, and I was like, you know what, I actually don't want to pick it up again because it just wasn't doing it for me. It's basically about this guy who finds out that he is the last Centaurian, and all these different people in power from opposite sides all want to get a hold of him to go and activate this device that they found that only a Centaurian can like activate. Sorry, there's a lot of construction noise going on in the background. There's a lot of houses being built nearby, and I just can't help the sound, so I'm sorry about that. But yes, it follows this guy, and he's just like constantly on the run basically from all these different people. It is very heavy on the sci-fi themes, like very weird stuff, and yeah, I just didn't love it. But you might, so I thought I'd pop it in here anyway in case it does sound like something more of your speed. It seems like if you do like the more classic sci-fi, you would enjoy this, but I just find that some of the classic sci-fi is a bit hit and miss for me, just in the way it's written and the pacing and stuff like that. I had from Darkest Skies, which I did enjoy, but it was heavy on the language, and which a lot of sci-fi is, unfortunately. But yeah, it was heavy on the language, which for the most part didn't bother me because I've kind of trained my brain to just skip over those kind of words as I'm reading and not even acknowledge them. So it's not a huge deal for me, but I did want to let you know that it's not 100% clean. This one is also a bit different to a lot of the other sci-fi that I've read because Allah is like in it as like the deity and that people most commonly worship rather than Jesus, because it is more to do with like the Indian and Middle Eastern and different kind of places like that culture. It is about this guy who is a detective of sorts, and his wife died 5 years previous in like this bombing, and he just can't let it go. So he made this robot that was like a replica of his wife, and he is trying to solve her murder while also trying to solve other cases, and everyone is of like different ethnicity. So he is from, I want to say he's like Hawaiian or something like that, some kind of island descent, and then a bunch of the people on his team and a bunch of the people on the planet that he is on, they're all from Indian descent and various other Eastern cultures. So it was really interesting to read just because it's different to anything that I've read before. The actual story was really good. If it didn't have the language, I would be giving this a solid 4, maybe even a 4.5 out of 5 stars. But because of the language, I've had to drop it back to a 3.5. I am tempted to pick up the rest of the series, but I haven't yet decided, so we'll see. But that is from Darkest Skies. The Christian sci-fi called Synapse. It isn't necessarily marketed specifically as Christian, but it is published by a Christian publisher and is very heavy on the faith when you actually are reading it. but I just picked it up from just a normal bookstore. It wasn't like listed under Christian fiction or anything. But I picked this up because Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day, she did a review a few months back about it and it sounded good, so I thought I would pick it up. But I think if you're not super like into sci-fi but you really like kind of detective mysteries, I feel like you'd really vibe with this one. It does have robots in it, but apart from that, it's pretty tame in the sci-fi realm, because it's just set on Earth like normal and it's not that far in the future. But it is about this woman named Kestrel, and I will let you know there is some heavy trigger warnings for miscarriage, stillbirth, child infant loss, that kind of thing. There is also just a few, yeah, just some sensitive topics that you just should be aware of. There was another one as well, but I can't think of what the other trigger was, so maybe look it up before you dive in if you are worried about trigger warnings. But I didn't know about it when I jumped in, so I thought I'd let you know. Chantel probably did mention it in her video, but it's just been so long that I didn't remember. But yeah, it follows this Lady Kestrel, and she starts off with her being in the hospital and having to go through the grief of a stillbirth, and she is a minister and she is trying to balance the grief with her faith, and it's causing her to doubt her faith and different things like that. But yeah, she doesn't want many people to know and to do anything like that because she doesn't have any really close friends or family. She's estranged from her brother, and her parents have passed away many years prior to the book. And she doesn't really have any close friends except for her congregation, but she doesn't really want them getting involved. And so she's trying to go through this kind of on her own. But then her brother comes back into her life and he wants to be there for her, but she's a bit reluctant. And he sends her this robot called Jordan, and she is very opposed to robots because they kill, like, their parents were killed by a robot. So she doesn't want anything to do with them, but her brother is like the opposite end, like his whole life is about robots. And she gets this robot and she makes a deal with her brother because she doesn't want to keep him, and she's like, I'll try him out because you're pushing me to, but like if I don't like him in a couple days time, I'll get rid of him. And then all of this stuff happens in those few days following, and they kind of go on this adventure where there is, yeah, terrorist plots and all sorts of things going on, and she's in danger and there's all these conspiracies happening and she's involved in that and gets swept up in that. You also follow a detective who is like on this case and everything with the terrorists and things. So yes, it's very much like almost like a TV episode of a like mystery crime show, something like that, but there just happens to be robots in it. So that is Synapse. I would probably give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I wouldn't give it a 5 out of 5 just because like the topics were really heavy, and I do feel like they were addressed relatively well. It's just it was a bit too sad for me in some parts, as it would be. So yes, that is Synapse. I do recommend it, but just be very cautious about it as well. And finally, the books that I've already talked about that I wanted to pop in here is Oxygen and the Fifth Man. This is a duology, a Christian sci-fi duology, and it is stellar. I loved it so much. I buddy read both of these with Celestria because she is so awesome and loves sci-fi as well, and wanted to read them with me, and we had a great time. I think we both agree that they were 5 out of 5 star books, the both of them, which is surprising to me because I feel like it's harder for a sequel to get a 5 out of 5. Yes, the whole series is a 5 out of 5, so I definitely recommend it. I hope that these guys write more books together because I feel like they're very good at it. It's written by dual authors, and yeah, they just really know their stuff and are very, very good at writing thriller suspense, because that's what this is primarily. It is a thriller suspense, mostly set in space, and it follows this crew of astronauts, and they are like going to be the last crew sent to out of space, and they happen to be going to Mars, and everything, like the whole American space program, hinges on this going well for them to get more funding. Otherwise, that's going to be the end of space travel for America. And yeah, it's just a wild ride. I don't know how much I can say without giving spoilers, but the first book basically follows this team as they are training and preparing to go, and then their actual like trip to get to Mars. So the first half of the book is like their training period, and then the second half is them on their way. And there's like terrorism and like all of this stuff going on, and there's a lot of moments of anxiety where you're kind of holding your breath to see what happens. And then the fifth man follows the crew that did make it to Mars, and basically what happens to them on Mars, because their whole goal of this trip is to try and find life. And some of the astronauts are like divided about if they want to find life or not, because they're Christians, and like there is a group of Christians that aren't happy with the space program because they believe that if they find other life, then it kind of disproves God. But then there's these other Christian scientists, like the astronauts, that are like, well, actually, no, it doesn't disprove God. It just changes what we know about him and stuff like that. And it kind of wrestles with that side of faith, which I found interesting because I don't think I've ever read a book that addresses that, and like scientists who have opinions on creation and stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting to read about. But the thriller suspense part of it was just so good. It was so well written. The only thing that they could have improved on, and Celeste and I probably agree on this too, is the romance, because there's like a romance throughout the series, and it's not executed very well. And I don't know if that's just because like they aren't romance writers or what it is. They might not have had experience writing it, but it's a bit janky and a bit stop-start, I guess you'd say, in a very abrupt way. But apart from that, it was really good, and it resolved well. So there's that. I definitely highly recommend this series. If you like science fiction at all, I would definitely go pick it up, especially if you like space science fiction specifically. Like if you're into any of those like Interstellar or Gravity movies or whatever, I definitely recommend picking that one up. But yes, that is all the science fiction ones I read recently, apart from The Host, but I did a full dedicated video on that, so you can go check that one out if you wish. But yes, that's science fiction for the moment. If you have any recommendations, please send them my way, because I'm running out of good science fiction to read, and yeah, I'd really appreciate some new good ones, because I love science fiction. It's my favorite genre, but I really struggle finding ones that I enjoy. So I would definitely appreciate your recommendations. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!